To improvise in jazz, you can do a whole lot with your major or minor pentatonic scales. Your major pentatonic is the 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Or your minor pentatonic scale, which is the 1, the flat 3, the 4, the 5, and the flat 7. You can do a whole lot with those 5 notes of either scale. But if you want to dive deeper into improvising, a better understanding of music theory can certainly come in handy. So let's go over some basic theory 101. Moving from one note to another to the note right next to it is called a half step. For example, moving from C to C sharp or C to B is a half step. Moving by 2 notes, skipping over one, equals a whole step. For example, from C to D or C to B flat. A major scale is made up of a series of whole and half steps. From C to D is a whole, half, whole, half. Whole, half, whole, half. Your major scale consists of 7 tones, and here we can see the whole half sequence in the major scale. Of course, the bottom of the scale is called the root or the tonic, and each one of these scale degrees has a fancy name: the supertonic, the submediate, the subdominant, so forth and so on. We don't need to know any of those. For our purposes, we're just going to simply refer to the notes in numbers. The first note of the scale, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the 8th. Okay? Now, the distance between one note and the next is called an interval. The distance between this note and this note, the first and second, is a whole step. We call that a major second. Here is a major third. A major fourth. From C to G is a 5th. C to A is a 6th. C to B is a 7th. These are all major intervals because this is a major scale. All right. The chords are formed using every other note of a scale. For example, in the C major scale, if I pick every other note of the scale, C, E, G, B, D, then a major C chord is formed. The 3 notes at the bottom, a 3-note chord, is called a triad. C, E, G together forms a C major triad. So these chords are built in thirds, right? This is a second, this is a third. So this is a third, this is a third, this is a third, this is a third. So chords are built in thirds. But notice that the thirds are not equal. From C to E is 2 whole steps, a major third. From E to G is only a step and a half, 1 whole step, 1 half. 1 1/2 steps equals a minor third. You can really see this on the piano when you look at it. On a major third, there are 3 skipped notes in between. On a minor third, there are 2 skipped notes in between. So, a major triad, or a major chord, is built with a major third on the bottom and a minor third on top. In fact, the sequence for major chords, starts with a major third. and then a minor third, and then a major, and then a minor, and it continues on in that fashion. A minor chord is the opposite, built on top of a minor third. We have a minor third, then a major, then a minor, then a major, and a minor, and so forth. So that's an interesting thing to know. So the two kinds of thirds are major or minor. Two intervals of thirds stacked on top of each other equals a triad, like C, E, G. Okay, since we only have two types of thirds, major or minor, then that means four combinations of major minor thirds exist, meaning there are only four possibilities of triads built in thirds: major, minor, diminished, and augmented. A major triad is built with a major third and a minor third. A minor triad is built with a minor third and a major third, the reverse of the major. Then there are two other possibilities. A diminished chord is minor thirds. Two minor thirds and two major thirds together would be an augmented chord. Just think of diminished as we squish the chord, augmented as we stretch the chord. So those are the four types of triads that exist: major, minor, diminished, and augmented. If we take the major scale using the key of the scale, in this case C with no sharps or flats, and we go up the scale building a triad on each step of the scale, each step being C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and we build a triad on each step of the scale, it will sound like this. Okay, so those are the 7 chords in the family or key of C. Now if we go back and start looking at those triads to determine which one of the 4 qualities each one of them is, we'll see that the first one is major, the second triad is minor, the third is minor, the fourth is major, the 5th chord in the series is also major, then minor, and then we'll notice that the 7th is different than the rest because it exists of 2 minor thirds, making it a diminished chord. Now, if we go in, let me get my Sharpie here, and we add the 7ths to those chords, oops, messed that one up, didn't I? Okay, now we have all 7 chords, and the result will be C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor 7, and still would be B diminished, only now we would have a major third here, which would mess us up. So this chord would exist of a minor third, and a major third, which would make it a half diminished chord. But we're not going to worry about that right now. We're not going to get that far in the weeds in this lesson. Okay, so again, the result is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and diminished in our chords sequence. And this is true for every major key. In all 12 keys, the sequence will be the same: major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. or half diminished if you're doing 7 chords. So notice that in the chord family, there are 3 major chords: the 1, the 4, and the 5. And that's all you need to write many hit songs, country songs, blues songs. All blues are based on 1-4-5 progressions. Lots and lots of songs have been written with only those 3 chords, and that's fine. But if you stack these 3 major chords to the 7ths, you'll see the intervals of one of the 3 major chords is different. If we look at the chords, we go C, and then we start on F and we stack up thirds. We again have a major third, a minor third, and a major third. But on the G, it's different. We have a major third and a minor third like before, but then we end up with a minor third on top instead of the major third. That's the only chord that's like that in the series of the chords. The 5 chord, in this case, would be G7. We call a 7 chord a dominant chord. There are 2 types of 7 chords: major 7 chords and dominant 7 chords. Major 7, dominant. Every chord is going to be major or minor or major 7 or dominant, because 2 notes of the 7th chord, or any 7th chord, or even a bigger chord like a 13 chord, only 2 notes in the chord determine the quality of the chord. The 3rd determines if the chord is major or minor. And the 7th determines if the chord is major 7 or a dominant 7. Major 7, dominant 7. Major chords, as you know, if you listen to the Triads, a major triad is happy sounding. A minor is more dark and mysterious sounding. Likewise with a major 7 chord, pretty. Dominant chord, a stronger chord, used in the blues. All the chords in the blues are dominant. Okay, but dominant chords in theory have another very important function. Turn my chart around here. As I said, there's only one dominant chord in a major progression, and that's the 5. The 5-7 is the strongest chord in the progression, and it leads you to the 1. The 5-1 progression is called the authentic cadence. Its strong pull towards the 1 chord is due to 2 notes in the dominant chord pushing you to the 1 in contrary motion, which makes it even more powerful. You see, if we look at the chord, these 2 notes here are pushing our ear there. Very strong pull. It wants to go to the 1. You can see the 2 leading tones. In both cases are half steps. And the fact that they're in contrary motion creates a stronger pull. And finally, so to find a chord that leads us to the 1, we looked back down the scale to the chord built on a 4th below, right? Here's C, that's home base. So we go down a 4th, 1, 2, 3, 4 to G, and we play the chord built on that, and it leads us to the C chord. Now if we want a chord preceding a chord to lead to the 5, we could use the same formula. Here's the 5, the G chord. So we go down from G, a 4th, 1, 2, 3, 4 to D, and build a chord off it in the key of C. It's going to lead us to G chord, which is the one that would lead us to the 1. The pull from the D minor chord to the G is not quite as strong because we only have one leading note, but it's a very strong pull from the 7th wanting to resolve to the 3rd. And then now we have a chord sequence that sounds like this. Hence the 2-5-1 progression. The 2-5 is the most important factor, and it is the building block of all jazz chord progressions and all of Western music for that matter. So learning how to play over a 2-5 chord progression, learning how to recognize the 2-5 and play over it is extremely important. It's essential if you're going to be an effective jazz player. And that's what we're going to study more about, the 2-5.